Welcome to the Vegan Pulse. I am your host, Nancy Arenas. We are welcoming back Gabriel Gaarden for another segment of Making Sense with Gabriel. Stick around. We'll be right back. Hi, Gabriel. Welcome back to Making Sense with Gabriel. How are you?
I'm doing well, Nancy. Thank you for having me. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much. And excited about this new episode, Making Sense with Gabriel. Question for you. Here it goes. Are you ready? Raise the roof.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Don't you feel tired and weak all the time since you don't eat any meat?
Wow, great question. Yeah, I think I should go take a nap. Isn't that funny, right? The viewers obviously can see, hopefully, that you and I aren't tired. We bring a lot of energy to this podcast or this video series. And, but that's something certainly that I think that I've heard often as a, longtime vegan now, and I'm sure you've heard many times over the years as well. And I think there's a number of contributing factors to that issue. First and foremost, I want to say that many people, when they transition to a predominantly plant-based and vegan diet, say the exact opposite. They'll say, oh my gosh, you wouldn't even believe it. Ever since I transitioned to a plant-based diet, I feel better than I felt in years. Or they'll even say, I feel better than I've felt in my entire life, as far as I can tell. And they just feel great. And then there's a certain proportion, and again, usually the proportions, the naysayers or the people that struggle tend to get more attention, right? Because for all the people that are doing well, they're not going to be out there asking questions about it. Oh, why do I feel so well on a vegan diet?
Hey,
they're
Gabriel,
just going to be enjoying it.
How come I feel so energetic, Gabriel? Why?
Yeah, right. If you feel good, you just live life, and you don't need to tell anybody about it. But we tend to, so the negative, not to say people are being negative when they ask this question, but it's the flip side of feeling really good, right? The negative emotions or the negative thoughts and feelings and the questions, when people don't feel good, they're going to be asking more questions, and they're going to be getting, and then the negative stuff gets more light, right? It's like, oh, look at this vegan diet. It's not sufficient in nutrients. It's not good for your health. It's not going to give you energy and keep you feeling vital so that you can do all the things that you love to do. And so, but I think that's a very small proportion. It's important that people realize that even though they may hear this, it's a small proportion of people who may tend to struggle initially. But for the people that do, go ahead.
Well, this is a question that people who eat meat ask.
Exactly. So they may have never even tried a plant-based diet, right? But they probably get this because they've heard somewhere, oh, I heard of this vegan, or I read this article somewhere, I heard this YouTuber, this vlogger say that they struggled or they failed or the vegan diet wasn't good for them. And so then they get this fear. It's kind of this fear-mongering thing, and then they start asking questions. But it's important to know that most people feel better than they've ever felt when they transition to a plant-based diet, vegan diet. But number two, it makes sense that many people or some people may have, it's a transition period, right? When you go from being a couch potato non-exerciser to then all of a sudden wanting to train for your first 5K or even say a half marathon or a marathon, you're going to feel like crud initially, right? Because your body is used to, it's accustomed to, it's acclimatized to doing relatively nothing. And then when all of a sudden you ramp up and you change your lifestyle, you're going from 0 to then wanting to ramp up to 100. That's going to take a long time. And you're going to feel bad for your initial runs when you're first starting to get going. But then as you do this over weeks and months, your body starts to adapt, and the running starts to get easier and easier and easier. And you can do it with more facility. You can do it with more ease. You start to feel stronger and better. Well, the same thing comes to healthy eating, right? If you've been eating the standard American diet or some ramification of it, even if you think it's a healthy version of a standard American diet, but if you're including a generous amount of animal products in your diet, it's a big change for your body and especially your gut, because it's having to process all of those nutrients. That's a huge change to go from an American diet, which is incredibly low in fiber, an incredibly important nutrient that 97% of Americans aren't even meeting the minimum recommendations for dietary fiber. 97%. This is abysmal. It's horrible. It's a tragedy. And of course, that's why we're doing the work that we do, because we want to change that. And so when you go from eating a very, very low fiber diet to then all of a sudden eating a lot of plants, which are the only source of fiber that exists, it's going to take a while for your microbiome. Those are all those good gut bugs that we have living inside of our large intestine. They're helping to break down and process that fiber so that we can get it through our gut and we can extract the nutrients that we need from our food. When you're not used to a high fiber diet, that may be uncomfortable to deal with that high fiber. And also your whole gut is used to extracting the nutrients that you need from a totally different diet. And so you got to give your gut a chance to adapt. And so that's why I always recommend to people, if you've been on a very low fiber diet, low in whole plant foods, only increase by about 5 grams of dietary fiber per week. So do that. So say I'm used to eating the average American eats about 15 grams of fiber right now. That's those 97% of Americans that I just mentioned. The minimum recommendation on average, men need a little more than women because women's nutrient needs are lower. They need less calories, and which means they also need less nutrients, less fiber. But if you average men and women together, the minimum recommendation is 31 grams, right? So the average American is only getting half of the minimum recommendation of fiber. But let's say increase 5 grams per week, do it for 7 days in a row. So that would mean I would go up to 20 grams this week, do it for a week, 25 grams the next week, and then just keep building it up, but do it gradually. Now, again, some people can transition to a plant-based diet and they do just fine. They've got a good gut, they're able to just, increase by 15, 20, 30 grams of fiber, overnight, and they do okay. But most people need to do this gradually. And then the number two biggest reason that people may fail on a vegan diet, or they may feel low energy or lethargic, is just because they're not eating enough, right? Plant-based foods are naturally much lower in calorie density than animal-based foods, and specifically ultra-processed foods and things like, oil, candy bars, potato chips, things like that. All these plants are much lower in calorie density, which means you have to eat more of them, which is really great because most people struggle with overeating. Most people in America are overweight and obese. And isn't it a blessing that there's a dietary, program out there, or a nutritional approach and lifestyle where you can eat as much as you want and you'll naturally lose weight and you'll gradually get down around your ideal body weight if you're eating a predominantly whole food plant-based diet, right? I can be a vegan and I can drink Dr. Pepper and I can eat Oreos and I can eat Lay's potato chips. That's not going to be great for my overall health. What I want to do is I want to eat whole plant foods, legumes, whole intact grains, fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, herbs, and spices. Those are the foods that support health and vitality and great energy. But again, we got to make sure we're eating enough food to meet our calorie needs, and so that we're going to have sufficient energy throughout the day. And I can't stress enough legumes and whole grains, but especially legumes, because these are the foods that are rich in complex carbohydrate. And those complex carbohydrates are going to give us that long, steady, lasting energy throughout the day. And so we want to eat plenty of those legumes and whole intact grains. And then another group of vegetable are the starchy vegetables. So think of tubers. Those are the starchy vegetables that grow in the ground, potatoes, sweet potatoes, yams, things like that. And then think of your above ground starchy vegetables, all of the winter squashes. So acorn squash, butternut squash, there's a ton of other squashes, not summer squash, zucchini and, yellow squash, summer squash, they're predominantly water. They hardly have any carbohydrate. But what does have a lot of carbohydrate are those winter squashes. So think winter squashes, tubers, legumes, and whole intact grains. And then we want to supplement those with lots of vegetables and fruits, because we know fruits and veggies are some of the healthiest foods on the planet for keeping us healthy and both preventing, treating, and even reversing chronic disease like type 2 diabetes, heart disease, obesity, things like that. So lots of complex carbohydrates throughout the day will keep you energized. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so very much for another episode of Vegan Pulse with Making Sense with Gabriel. Bye. Thank you for joining us in another episode of the Vegan Pulse. I am your host, Nancy Arenas. Remember to follow us on Facebook, like us too, check out our blog, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You'll never miss another episode. If you have a pulse, you have a purpose. Live vegan.